Okay, just gone past 7 o'clock in Queensland, Australia. We're broadcasting from the Radio FM 88 Australia studios, and a co-host, as you know, it comes from the UK, and it's the privileges of using this new technology. Our guests, would you believe it, come from Queensland, of all places. But I'm going to leave that to Andrena to carry the show, and you're going to be enthralled with it, because certainly I am. Up to you, mate.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Dreaming the New Dream. And today is the 25th of May, would you believe, 2023. So, well, we have a variety today, which we don't usually have many. It's usually the three. So today we've got five. So it's great pleasure to have Andrea, Warren and Helen on the show today. They're all horsey people in the nicest possible way. And they're going to share their stories all about equine therapy and how it can help you, how you can become unstuck through trauma and all sorts of things. And, you know, I've got a special interest because there's 4 horses on the farm here. One's a little rescue one called Tinker, who's certainly got a will of his own. And the other 3 are just, you know, horses. And I love going down and talking to them, but I don't really interact that much. But it'd be nice to know a little bit more about them. So if we start off with Andrea, she's our main guest, who was going to be the star of the show until she's brought in some newbies. So would you like to share how you started and how you got into the world of horses, and how, you know, if you want to interact and weave between you all, you know, it's just going to be lovely to hear in your stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Andrena. Yeah, so I guess I was thinking about how I could answer this question a little bit, and it really goes back to when I first started my journey into social work. So I'm an accredited mental health social worker, and I started in 2008. I completed my studies, and during that time I was really privileged to do my placement. We do a 1,000-hour placement into 500 blocks, and I did it for I did one overseas in Brazil, in the favelas, working on a project there. And then my other placement I did in a place called Project Respect, which is an organisation that works with women who had been trafficked for sexual servitude. And that's where I really got my first real, I guess, look into trauma and how trauma impacts on people. And then after that, I came back to the Gold Coast, because that was all in Melbourne. And I started my job with the government. And my second year, my boss, who was amazing, she turned around to me and she said, "Oh, Andrea, I really want you to run this group for women who have experienced domestic violence. It's about supporting them, and it's psychoeducation." And I felt really underskilled, and I was so fresh too. So and during that time, I had a lot of feedback from the women, and they would say things like, you know, I've done so much work in, you know, say like in CBT, but I still feel like I haven't healed. And I guess through that, I started my real journey and started really to look into, I guess, my curiosity around somatic work, you know, in my practice. And I got really curious about how the body plays a role in healing. And that then took me to my recent certification in trauma-sensitive yoga and equine assisted psychotherapy. So that's long-winded.
Just can I butt in? When you say about the trauma, the yoga, how does that work then? Are you doing sort of specific exercises with an intention, or?
So it is a trauma-sensitive yoga is a very specific technique that was developed for survivors of long-term trauma. And or complex trauma. And really what it's about is it's not like yoga as we would know it, I guess. It's about how it's a very trauma-informed way of giving people choice, invitation. And it sounds really simple, I should say that. Like, there's no Sanskrit in it. It's all about how we provide a safe place for people to explore their body and reconnect with their body. Is probably one of the best ways I can describe it.
Right, okay. And
Yeah,
I've not heard of that before. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah, so it was developed out of the trauma center in Boston, and yeah, it's very like I was saying, it's very specific. It's not some people, I like to describe it more as movement instead of yoga, because sometimes with yoga that can hold a little bit of a, I don't want to do that. But it's basically providing a space to connect in your body and introspection, which is, you know, that felt sense, because often when we experience trauma, there's a disconnect there. So yeah, and yeah.
Okay, sorry, I put it in there, but I thought I'll ask you why as we're going along, so I don't forget anything.
Oh no, that's okay. Yeah. So I guess moving into, did you want to know like a little bit around what equine assisted psychotherapy is?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, I'm like, all right. So basically, you know, it's very similar to, I guess it steps away from room-based, but there are some similarities there. But it's like meeting in a paddock, and, you know, with the horses, and we're working on therapy goals, and we have treatment plans, but we're doing it in partnership with horses. It is unmounted work. So there's no horsemanship experience required to do this therapy. And so we're like working side by side the horses, and it's about relationship and connection. And so I think that's really, really important.
And
so
had you grown up with horses at all?
Yeah, I've been on horses. I think I've got my first picture, I think I was about 2 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but they've come in and out of my life. They've been more prominent in some parts, like probably in my early years. And then when I was studying and traveling, it was more just, still tried to ride when I could and things like that. But it's more recently when I've looked at, the equine assisted psychotherapy as another way of working with people who, out of that real clinical pharmaceutical model.
Amazing. Wow, it's fascinating. So how did you guys all come together then? Are you working together? Who would like to share next?
Warren's ready to get out of the jump.
I'm happy to. Yeah, look, thanks very much, Andrena, for being with you all tonight. And I'm on Yungabar country here at Beachmont, up in the mountains behind the Gold Coast. And Andrea and myself are neighbours in terms of the properties. And Helen, along the three of us are all equine assisted psychotherapists certified through the Equine Psychotherapy Institute in Victoria. So even though Andrea and I have known each other for many years, we fortunately both ended up doing the same equine assisted psychotherapy course, which is great. In terms of the relationship, I guess Andrea made mention of the importance of the relationship. And for me and my journey, my family settled as settlers on this land back in 1890 So that was quite a while ago on this blog that I'm on here. And I'm very privileged to still be on the farm. And the relationship for me with horses and with nature, with cattle and chooks and dogs and cats and all sorts of animals has always been a really major part of my life. And even when I was a little fella, I knew that there was something special about all those relationships for me and the natural world. So I feel very, very privileged, as I say, to still be here on property, on this Yangambah country, on this land, particularly as the world changes and, I get older, still here, which is great. But, after many decades of a health professional life with clinical nursing and public health clinician, it was lovely always to have the connection with my animals, but particularly with the horses. So always had a relationship with various horses of my own and other people's horses. Always, Andrena seemed to be drawn to the horse. As a young fella, I couldn't really, understand why that was. But as I now know, particularly through the work we're doing and the information we've learned, there's a lot of power there in the mammal, the horses, in terms of their capacity to be models for us, particularly as I guess our experience particularly has morphed into very individual sort of individual perception of self rather than maybe community. So a lot of my work that I've done is around community, and it's about wellness, and it's about therapy and counselling for people who've got chronic illness and various range of illnesses. But the psychotherapy work with the equines is really strongly based on awareness and relationship, as Andrea mentioned. Exploring with our clients as they feel safe to do so, feelings and life's challenges, and but particularly regulation. I'm doing work at the moment around the polyvagal theory and regulation of our nervous system. So, and that's a really important aspect, something I never ever sort of heard of as growing up, or even as a health professional for many decades. I was never trained or taught about, how do we learn to know what's happening in our bodies? Not what's up here and what we're thinking, but what are we actually feeling? And so the work with the horses is very much based on that, and that somatic work, that body work, that feeling work. But at times, safe, I think, and the relationship I have with Andrea and Helen is very much about supporting one another and reflecting on our practice and us feeling safe, and the importance of reflecting on what we do with clients and then how do we support ourselves.
Fabulous. So, okay, so let's have Helen. Would you like to share as well?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. Thank you for having me here tonight. My journey's been, I guess, a slow burn. So I grew up with a family from stations out west. So we've got horse people for generations, but I didn't have a horse. And I used to cry myself to sleep about it. And eventually my parents bought back on the coast, and I used all my pocket money to buy my first horse. But I think it was about grade 1, grade 2, I just became obsessed with horses, and the obsession, I'm in my late 40s now, just has not left. So I read an article in a horse magazine when I think I was 13 about a family that were taking young Indigenous youth who were bound for the juvenile justice system, and they were taking them to a horse property, basically mustering in a herd of Arabian horses and saying, pick one, and that horse you're going to take, you're going to learn everything you need to about horses, and at the end of it, you're going to compete in a really long endurance race. And the study showed that these kids, they went in, they learned about nutrition and training. They did this amazing race called the Tom Quilty race, which is Australia's national endurance race. And hardly any of those kids went to reoffend. And when I was 13, I was just like, wow, that just blew my mind. I'd grown up in a very isolated kind of space. I grew up with a lot of childhood trauma and had a pretty tough time of it as a young person. And I remember when we first got our farm, I just used to wander aimlessly for days with the herd of horses, and I felt a connection and a peace that I could never experience with people. They were a safe space for me. And I think I was always drawn to animals. I only had an older brother, and he wasn't particularly interested in me, so I was pretty lonesome in my childhood. And typical older brother. And animals were my siblings. They were my best friends. They were my confidence. They were the thing to give me all of the emotional support that I needed in life, because other adults couldn't give that to me. So horses were just such a comfort and a source of connection. And as I grew, that kind of passion for the horses continued. And I had a pretty rough trot as in high school, and was really passionate about helping young people in mental health and wellness. And I kind of thought teaching might offer me that, get into that space when they're young and have relationships with kids to help their passage through life become a little bit easier. And it just, when I was teaching, it didn't allow me to provide the kids what I really wanted to. I couldn't help them in the way that I wanted to. So I jumped out of that space into a pharmaceutical role with medicines with mental health. And while I was working there, I studied psychology, counselling, did my master's, and finally got here. So it only took me, 4 degrees, and I think 14 years of study, but I made it. And I'm still as passionate about horses. I've got a herd of 7 horses, and I've had some of my horses now for over 25 years. I worked as a horse breaker and trainer, and I still compete in competitive dressage and horse showing. And horses have been life, and nature has been life, but I never lost that connection with animals. And I remember sitting on our farm by myself, watching animals and thinking, man, if I could use these metaphors with kids to explain what's happening in life, like watching the horses, watching their interactions, watching the way that they communicated, the way that they cared for each other. If I could just allow other people to see what I'm seeing, because I know that other people feel the way that I feel and experience what I've experienced, I'm sure that could help somebody. So it took me a long time to get to the point where I felt confident enough to be in this space. And I opened my practice in 2021, and it has just been magical having the opportunity to share the magic of horses with my clients and seeing how they respond to them. And when Warren was talking, having that ability to offer a holistic service where we're walking away from the medical model and really seeing the people as they are. And horses offer a really beautiful way to diffuse the intensity of what can be quite a difficult environment with counselling, opening up, and having the horses there offers this beautiful safe space where people can be really seen and heard. And the therapeutic relationship develops so much faster having the horses or the chickens or the dogs involved in this beautiful natural space with clients. It's been a real privilege.
Fabulous. Right, so how do people find you guys? What sort of age range? Obviously, like people that have got horses, there's obviously a website or something where you're all on. So, or are you word of mouth? So I'll let whoever wants to speak.
We don't have there's no limit with age in terms of having an experience with equine assisted psychotherapy. I mean, we have such a range of not only clients with their age, but in terms of their presentation. So as Andrea made some reference to, it's not about having an understanding of horses or any experience with horses. There's lots of ways people can benefit from being around horses, but in nature, not being in a clinic. It's quite a journey. And we really work with what's being presented in the here and now. Andrena. So it's not about going back and back and back into the there and then, although that's sometimes what happens, but it's about what's being presented right now and us noticing. So it's all about the noticing of our clients, but what's happening with the horse. Sometimes we might have a session where the person is on this side of the fence and the horse is on the other side of the fence. It's all about whatever is a safe space and container for the client. That's what's most important. But there's certainly there's no real definition about I'll look there. I'm not saying some therapists may say they prefer to work with a certain group of people, but generally the practice is about everything and everyone. And that's the beautiful thing about it. It's so inclusive.
Yeah, I have a bit of a caveat around age, purely from a safety stance of the person has to be able to have some idea of what our safety guidelines, to be able to follow the safety guidelines, just to ensure both the kids and the horses stay safe. So I kind of find about 4 years old, much younger than that, they need a lot of parental assistance, and that can really become a bit of a barrier in the therapeutic experience, where mum or caregiver is going, don't do this and don't go there and watch out here and oh, don't do that. So for me, myself personally, my youngest clients generally start around 4 or so and go all the way up into their 80s, and it really is a kind of an experience where the client chooses how much or how little they want to engage. It's a very client-led experience where they don't come to us and we go, yep, okay, you're going to do this and this and this. And sometimes a horse will choose a client. We might go for a wander through the paddock and a horse will come, and we do all consent-based work with the horses. So we don't go out and, chuck a halter on and say, come on, you're coming with me. We ask the horse if they want to work with us, and we give them that space too. And that in itself can present a lot of really interesting interactions for clients, because sometimes they see a really pretty horse and they say, I want to work with that one, and the horse goes, nah. And then that can bring up some really intense feelings of shame or rejection. It's really interesting what can come out of those little imperfect moments, I guess you could call them. So it's very much you go with the flow in this type of therapy, and because you're also working with horses, what do they say? Don't work with kids and animals. But it's, horses are unpredictable, and that's one of the beautiful things about them, is that you never know where a session may go. And I think that adds to the depth and the intensity of this work, is because everything's so raw and present and real. It really gives clients a very immediate response to what's going on, which creates sometimes really fast-tracked work because it's right here and now, and you add that into the energy and the movement. There's a lot that goes on in sessions that often is quite unspoken almost. It's a feeling rather than always having to be talking a lot.
Yeah. I think that's one of the most important things about this work, is that it is client-led. We don't have an agenda, and it's experiential therapy. It's so different to room-based. Helen was just saying, it can be so quick, but it can also be slow, and it just takes as long as it takes. I remember some feeling at times that nothing was happening, or the client was just there with the horse, but so much was happening because once again, there's a lot of things that are happening that are where you don't need language, where there's where clients are moving through, and it could just purely be building a safe, having a safe relationship. Something
it's that attunement, isn't it?
Yeah, where they haven't experienced it maybe ever in their life, or maybe they can't remember the last time they had a relationship where they felt safe to express themselves authentically and feel like they could do that. And I was just thinking about some examples that might be helpful for people to get a bit of a feel about what a session may look like. And every session is different. You never know. You can never fully plan a session, I think, in equine therapy. But one of the most important things is what we find is when we arrive, we arrive and we ensure that, I guess there's like a there's the mindfulness piece of the session, and that's just arriving and grounding, and because when we go out with horses as well, it's important that, you know, we've shaken off maybe some of that nervous energy, that anxiety. It still might be there, but the person is in maybe a settled space to go and work with horses.
To add into that is because the mirror neuron. So horses will pick up on the energy from a person and vice versa. So we're often, if a person's very heightened and they go out with the horses will have a very specific reaction to their heightened energy. So we really, you know, encourage, as Andy was saying, clients to land first before they go out.
Yeah, and that comes back in being prey animals, right? You know, which means that they've been hunted since the beginning of time. So they're very attuned to their environment and very curious as well. And they're picking up, like you said, on our internal state. So yeah, and then we go out. I was going to give an example about one of my clients, which is probably one of the most beautiful examples I can think about, where we were in the paddock and we'd just done our grounding, our arriving, our, you know, coming into the moment, and she was and we're in the middle of the paddock. The horses are at liberty, meaning that they're just in the paddock doing their thing. We're walking around, eating grass, whatever they decide that they want to do, and we're just in the middle of the paddock having a chat about what's happening, what's going on in her body. And she was talking about how she had a lot of abandonment and rejection issues that come from her relationship with her mother. And she was saying how they were sitting around her tummy and her hip area, and it was black and it was heavy. And in that moment, she's explaining it, and she was resourcing a little bit because it was, you know, I could see in her body that a lot of emotion was coming up. And my horse Storm just walked over to her, put her muzzle right on her tummy. And in that moment, she just had this experience that was beyond words, really. And I said to her, "Oh, you know, what did you experience?" And she said, "I just felt so seen and validated in that moment." And then she started to chuckle and she said, "Do you teach your horses to do that?" And I said, "No." I said, "The horses show up in the way that they need to sometimes. You know, you can't teach a horse to do that." And to this day, she always speaks, like every session we have, that has just sat with her. It's there with her about this moment that really has changed her trajectory now. And, you know, as we're working through, you know, her goals, her treatment goals, and where she wants to go and be. And that was just the start of it. She just felt, like I said, just so seen and so heard in that moment, but by the horses.
I think being seen is can be so healing, and not only do we acknowledge for our clients to be seen and to be heard, but we like to say to be felt and to get got. So it's more than just being seen and heard. Being felt and getting gotten is so important for all of us. But and that's how the three of us have our relationship with our horses. Is they're not only seen and heard, but they're felt. So that attunement and that feel, that sense of being felt is such a healing, powerful energy that, after, as I say, decades of working with clients in a clinical setting, you may feel it, and you know that some of your clients feel it, but in the environments that we work in, the outdoors with the animals, that is such a powerful resource for us and for our clients.
Fabulous. So how long is a session? So if people book to see you guys, how long is a session, or does it vary, or what time frame do you work on?
Most of my sessions are an hour or maybe an hour and a half. I don't know about you guys. Is that similar with you?
Yeah.
They are that time, and once again, I've got some younger people that attend, and they have living with autism, and it's taken a while, and there's been no pressure. It's just about building up that safe relationship. So I think I heard Andrea say it takes as long as it takes. It's not like a quick fix in modern medicine where we want a pill to fix us. This is really the client's journey, and it's about creating that safe container so they can really start to feel safe and then express stuff like Andrea was sharing about her client. Once we can feel safe to feel those vulnerabilities and lean into stuff rather than go, oh, we don't want to feel that, we don't take a pill so you don't feel this or you don't feel that, but actually lean into stuff, whether it's sadness or joy or fear or anger. I mean, they're all the emotions that a horse has as well. They feel them and they deal with them and they move on. So some of the work that we do allows that to happen, not in one session, but time.
Yeah, we look to the horse and how the horse models behavior quite regularly, whether it's boundary setting, whether it's the way that they emotionally regulate themselves, the way that they do process the different emotions, and even through the way that they communicate within the herd dynamics. And for me, I've had some clients who've turned up, and I think all of my clients have come from backgrounds of treatment resistant through other forms of therapy, and they've definitely failed through room-based therapy. And the horses are the initial draw card. And I've had a client come and he's like, yeah, well, I'm here for the horses. Don't expect us to get along. I'm not here for you. And just put it straight out there. And I love that. I was like, awesome. Okay. As long as you like somebody here, I'm okay with that. If you're here for the horses, that's good. We've been working together now for about a year and a half. And this young person is just so phenomenally transformed. And yes, the horses are still a really important part of our sessions, but it's kind of gone from a bit of crisis management in the early days of lots of things that would kind of come up to now him being in a place in his life where he can actually continue to work through a lot of the trauma that he's had going on. And that's really taken time and the support of the horses, and then to feel safe enough to be with me, because he's not a person, and I experienced with a lot of clients, that has had a lot of trust in the therapeutic process. And I love how holistic this is. I love that it is a sidestep from the medical model. I started with psychology, but stepped across to counselling because it really gave me the opportunity to really be able to tune with clients, and the horses just deepen that experience and the way that they model, I guess, everything that we as humans would love to be. It's a really beautiful space to offer clients. But as Warren and Andy said, the work takes as long as it works, and most of my clients are static clients, which means they are long-term clients. They've got a lot to work on. There's a lot to process. So as much as I might do shorter group sessions that are working on a very specific goal, a lot of the work that we do is hour-long sessions, but over a long period of time.
Andrena, too, I think, we're at a time in our journey as a collective species that, the horse has been a workhorse, it's been a war horse, it's always been there as part of us. But now, there's such change coming over in terms of them being our teachers, if we only listen and we open to it. So I really believe that, this is a great time of change, and us three, along with many other people, are fortunate enough to be a part of that, and honour the horse and really respect them. And they are certainly honoured as a member of the family and the team. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
I had a lady come and see me today, and her whole family's into nature, and particularly her mum up at Tyro. And people bring her horses who require healing. So she'll do Bowen on them, but she also does homeopathic remedies for that particular horse. So she really tunes into the horse, and you could say she's a horse whisperer as the current terminology, but she's really in tune with the horses. But other people bring other animals to her, so sometimes you have to forget that the doctors, which is the horses, they sometimes need their own doctor, right?
Oh, yes, indeed.
Absolutely. Yeah. We offer our horses a lot of I guess this therapy adds just a whole nother dimension, because I think being a horse person is really essential, and not everybody comes into this space with a lot of horse experience. So it's a bit of a learning curve. But yeah, our horse and the way we manage our herd and the way that we manage them even across a day. So if you have a full day, you might have, say, 5 clients. You may have more if you're doing groups. So really being aware of horse behavior, being able to read all the micro cues of stress, being constantly aware of what's happening to those in any interaction to keep them safe, to keep our clients safe, and to do a lot of work outside sessions, like having their bone therapy, their massage, their red light therapy, all of their supplements, and even just enrichment, taking them out for walks, taking them for rides, taking them to the beach, giving them downtime away from people is really important part of what we do. And that's always in our mind when we're working, is how well are we managing our horses and our herd in this particular moment, so everybody's having a good experience, I suppose.
About 15 years ago, I had a guy on the radio, and he was a champion horse trainer, and he trained so many Group A winners, and he wasn't one of the major stables, but he also did triathletes, and his therapy was based on what's his name? Joseph, of the guy who got chucked out of bloody Egypt, you know that guy, and he found about pulses, and he found out what pulses meant, which was a stable of food like the lentils and other lightweight materials. And so he then started to bring that type of ingredient into the horse's diet, and then he put classical music into the stables, along with the sounds of natural sounds that you would obviously hear in the bush. And so once he got his horses all psyched up in the space, he then put his jockeys on the same regime. And the thing was, I don't know if they listened to bloody classical music, but the thing was, he got them to do chin-ups and just hold themselves on the bar, so that their spine on the jockey would go bump, 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 because part of the riding was, getting right over the horse to ride. And as a consequence, he got his jockeys, he lost them anywhere between 6 to 7 kilos on their current weight. But more importantly, when Sunday came around, they could go to North Leaks Club in Brisbane, which is about close to all the the racetracks there at Doomben and Eagle Farm. They could go and have a steak and have a roast meal and have pudding and all that stuff. And so he took that and he put that into triathletes, and he'd done extremely well with triathletes based on the pulses diet as well as classical and natural sound music.
Yeah, that's really cool. There's definitely studies out there because they look at stable health within horses, because everybody has their own kind of setup, and some people do rely on needing to stable, especially if you're in the UK, for example, to be able to work across winter months, you're not necessarily going to have access to be able to use a paddock. So yeah, definitely music is really, really important. But going back to that spine straightening, that's really interesting, because when we start horses under saddle and teach them how to be ridden, it's not usually all the stuff that we put on them that's difficult for horses to accept. It's when we hop on top of them and we change that center of balance that horses can get a bit wonky with. And I don't particularly or personally offer mounted sessions. Some practitioners do offer mounted sessions in equine assisted therapy, and I know that it can be very helpful. But I personally don't allow people to ride the horses, both from a consent basis, because I don't think my horses personally love the idea of everyone jumping on their backs, but I know that it can be a really, really helpful different kind of add-on to what we do to help different people work through their trauma as well.
I should say that the secret of that particular horse trainer was, once you have the horses and the jockeys on that same diet, their auric field, or the energetic field, the horse and the jockey became one. And the jockeys would actually say, just one slight movement, because you actually brought it to my attention, the center of gravity. And that jockey just fainted to the left, the horse would go to the left, and that's where they had that special what do you call it? That extra oomph against the other dogs.
It's interesting because our electromagnetic field of our heart can actually be picked up by the horse as well when we're close enough to it. So I wonder if there's, whatever they were eating and the exercise, the diet that they had created a particular rhythm as well that synced up with the horse.
Awesome. Who's next?
Oh, that's really cool. No, go.
Yeah, I was going to say, do any of you have one special horse that, you know, makes a beeline for the people that come in? Because there's some that, you know, just carry on doing their own thing, and there's others that want to be involved, isn't there?
Yeah, I've got a little grey Welsh pony, and he nickers to everybody who comes. He walks up to the gate to greet every single client, and he follows them to the gate to say goodbye. Every single client without fail. He's got a particular, I don't know, little magic about him. He's pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh,
Beautiful.
Yeah.
This is a photo I loved. Sorry. When all the photos came in, this one came in, and I thought, man, this guy, he's in the camera.
Oh, he's beautiful.
He is.
Thanks. It's a big baby.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think my journey to my herd is a bit tragic and sad, actually, Andrena. I started off with 2 mini ponies. I had Storm and Charlie. Charlie, unfortunately, as beautiful as he wasn't really a suitable horse for equine therapy. He just had some issues, and so I had to change him, and I got another miniature called Betty. But unfortunately, my little Storm, he got bitten by a snake, and he passed away. And so it was really traumatic for me. It was such a heartbreaking experience to lose him and to go through that with him. And then I got Storm, and she is the grey mare in the picture there, and Betty's the little one next to her. And Storm was a journey in to find a horse. You wouldn't think it would be. When I say difficult, it's more to do with the people who are selling the horse than finding the horse. And she came to me, and I when I first got her, I just loved her. I met her, and she has such big energy about her. She's actually not that. She's about 14.1, I think, hands, and she. When probably about 2 weeks in, I got a guy called Gary to come out and do a session on her because she did something really funny with her leg, and I had this response to it. I was actually quite triggered because I was like, oh no, I'm going to lose another horse, you know. I just lost one, I'm going to lose another one. And he came out and he did all this body work on her, and she just down her neckline there, she was really, really tight, and he said she's holding so much in, and he did all this work, and she actually started to cry. She had tears coming out of her eyes, and he said,
really?
Yeah, he said she's grieving her herd, her owner, you know, because she'd been with her owner so she's 8 years old, and she'd been with her owner since she was 1, and I felt quite ignorant in that moment and didn't think about, wow, I just thought she'd be so happy to be with me. You know, oh, you're in this beautiful house, you've got, you know, you're here with Betty, but it was it was a really pivotal moment for me to have a bit more knowledge and respect that, she was actually grieving. And once she had this treatment, it was just amazing. And she's very special. I think she's special. I feel like one of those mums who thinks their child is a genius.
And why not?
But Betty is one of my friends explained it to me. Sometimes you have a dog and it's a dog, but then you have one of those dogs that's just so in tune with people and with you as an owner. That's how I see Storm. She's very in tune with her surroundings, with people, and she's a funny horse too. She's done some funny things, hasn't she, Warren, lately?
Oh yeah, she's funny girl, that one.
Go on, share.
And wasn't it beautiful that you had Little Storm, and Andrew didn't name her larger, the new horse Storm. She arrived and I said, "What's the horse's name?" She said, "His name's Storm." And we were just like, "Oh, wow, that's rather incredible, to have because they come with a name, and you usually keep the name they've arrived with. So that was really powerful.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, no, she gets up to some tricks.
Yeah. like
because I live across the road, I see her every morning. So, which is great. She comes and I give her a little treat. Her and Eddie. But yeah, she's wonderful. They're both quite special. I'm not going to
Yeah, they don't have to be the extrovert to do really valuable work, though. I've got a herd of 7 and I've got a real mix. The mares tend to stay back unless you need them, and it'll be the geldings. They'll be like, "Hey, look at me, can I touch you? What do you got? Hey, who are you?" What, really quite intense. I want to touch everybody. They want to be very close. They don't really listen to a lot of spatial boundaries, and the mares kind of hang back. But if somebody's having a tough day, it's generally the mares who are right there with them. They're very unobtrusive. They give you a lot of space, and they wait almost to be invited. And I've got one very, very old 35-year-old pony, and she's extremely introverted. And every now and again, she will choose a human, and she's only done it maybe twice in her life. And, she chose this one little boy a while ago. He was an absolute action-packed ADD, bouncing off the walls kind of kid. And he was a 6-year-old who came to me with suicidality and a lot of disengagement from school. And I don't know what happened, but he just saw this horse, and this old horse saw him. And this is a pony that would hide to avoid being touched or caught. And she just marched up to him, and he said, "Hello, Granny." And she just, because she's old, she's all grey and wrinkly and hairy. And she looked at him, and she touched him, and she let her put a halter on him. And I kid you not, this old pony would try and knock down the gate to get to him if she knew he was there. And by the end of our 10 sessions, I think about 8 weeks in, the mum said, "Look, he's doing amazingly at school. He doesn't talk about killing himself anymore. All the teachers have noticed a huge difference in his behaviour." And going back to what Andy was saying, sometimes you don't feel like you're doing the work. This kid spent half his sessions kicking over piles of poo. But there was something happening in those moments with that connection with that pony that just the connection was so transformative. And I think that if I looked at every single client who comes to me, and as I said earlier, I think all of the clients come for the horses initially. That's why they seek out equine therapy, is they're looking for a connection. And everybody who I have, deep down, that is what they're there for. They are there for connection, and the idea of connecting with an animal feels a lot more safe and a lot more reliable than the possibility of connecting with a person. And it's really lovely. It's often the most unexpected horses, the unobtrusive horses, that can produce really beautiful work and results with different clients. So they all hold a place regardless on their personality. Sometimes it's the really intense ones that you can't get away that end up being, a little bit almost annoying, to the point where it's like, you need to just give us some space. Really good for boundary setting, but it's those quiet moments with some of those quieter horses that are really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
The horse and the client sort of tend to find each other, Andrena. They sort of, there's a knowing, and I really can't underestimate the power of the energy of love in the relationships, without sounding, soppy about that, but it's a really strong force, and you feel it, and the clients feel it. And I'm studying trauma in humans and horses at the moment. I have a mare I have a strong attachment to personally. She's been with me for 13 years, Georgia. And she has trauma from her early experiences, and when I have a client present who has experienced trauma, they find each other, and what goes on there is just really powerful, and it's not something that I construct. It's it happens, and I guess our role as a practitioner is to notice and to be able to sensitively possibly explore stuff with the client.
Yeah.
When it's appropriate. But it is a powerful energy that goes on, and it's hard to describe sometimes. It just is.
Absolutely.
If you're open to it.
Yeah, I've got an example for that. I had a client, and it was right at the end of a session. We were just packing up what we'd been doing, and this client just from nowhere blurted out about some challenges he'd had throughout his life, some trauma he'd had with his mother, and she's never had my back. She's never been there. And the next minute, one of the mares, who doesn't generally kind of interact a lot, she came and stood behind him, and he actually became quite emotional. He's like, was getting quite upset. And I said, oh, I think somebody's got your back now. Just take notice who's behind you. And he actually didn't really have much of a relationship with women before then. He didn't generally trust women a lot. And her being behind him in that moment, just supporting him, just being there, having his back, because these releases were very few and far between. He often didn't divulge information about his family, was so profound to him. It changed the course of our work that we did, and then going in to explore that just a little bit and letting it be. And then from there on, any days now that he is having a tough day, she's right there for him, and he accepts her in a way that he would never work with the female horses before. He'd only work with the male horses, but now he actually seeks her out, and he accepts her love and her connection that she offers him in those days. And it was actually probably one of the key turning points in the therapeutic relationship and the work that he was doing, was that one little interaction.
Fabulous. So your work is really being totally in the moment, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
What shows up, and you work. And we have choice points, and you have to be careful of dosage and window of tolerance as well, especially when you're dealing with trauma. You don't want someone to flood and become too emotional. So you're like, that's as the therapist, that's what you're being really mindful of every step of the way when you're doing this work as well, because this could be the first time that someone's ever experienced or told someone about their trauma or how they feel about their mum, or something awful has happened to them, abuse, neglect. So, and it's that safe container that you create as a therapist is so important in those moments. And that's the relationship part of it as well. Yeah. Trust, building.
It's a really beautiful dance, isn't it? That you play throughout, the whole relationship of dipping your toe in and out and just knowing exactly what to offer and what not to. And often sitting back and letting them have that moment with the horse is more important than kind of jumping in.
And if they do get flooded or something happens, that's when we resource and we ground and we go to the somatic, the bottom-up therapy part of it. We resource. We might go, okay, what's happening in your body? What do you need now? What does your body need now? And that could be anything, like some of the things that I do, and it's not necessarily part of the model. It's just some things that, whether it's breath work or, connecting back into the breath to come back into the parasympathetic nervous system. It could be the butterfly hug, which is this one, and breathing just to help come back down. There's all sorts of things. Or it just could be something that the client at the initial stages when we spoke about, at the initial stage when we start therapy, what they resource to, and it could be the blue sky, it could be the wind that they feel, and that's what they resource back to come back to the present moment. And that's where we need to be, coming back, gently coming back.
And trauma is really about not being in the present, for people that have. So to connect with our 5 external senses, our touch and hearing and sight and taste, and that's what really allows us to ground and to really feel solid and connected and to find an anchor or a resource that we can identify with that really gives us that feeling of safety. And the horses, we can co-regulate, our clients and myself and us three particularly, with our horses. They assist us to co-regulate our nervous system. So with their out-breath and that's their out-breath. And them
They do it naturally, don't they?
Okay, and you know, my Georgia, she'll get really up really quick, and she and you know, it takes. I have to regulate myself, you know, to just allow her to settle as well. So that's really powerful. That co-regulation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Jocelyn has said, let's
Yes.
read out what before it disappears. We bought our daughter a beautiful coloured horse who had been treated badly, and there was an instant bond with them. And we found out she was in foal. We kept him when he was born and named him Merlin because he is magic. A year later, I was diagnosed with cancer, and he has helped me through 5 years of treatment. I believe they come for a reason. He's now 14 and still with his mum. We love them to bits. Lovely, Jocelyn.
Beautiful.
Thank you for sharing.
Beautiful.
Hey, I'm going to add a fourth party to you guys, and I should have bloody got hold of him during the week. And he's on the Gold Coast. He's at Burleigh, and I'm going to put his name up there. His name is Greg Bushell. Yeah, he's an animal. He's Dr. Doodle, the animal whisperer, and it's amazing, heartfelt story. When I listened to you girls talking about it, and even you, Warren, about being a kid, this guy had such a connection with animals. They come to him, and he could actually communicate with them. Anyway, he got married, had the kids, and then the wife said, you know, you got to be a football dad. And so all that gifts sort of went to one side. And then when the kids got old enough, you know, they said, Dad, if you want to be an animal whisperer, you want to be one of those nerds, yeah, we're okay with that, mate. You know, we're okay. And so him and his wife separated, and he was 60, would you believe? He's now got back into it. So we had him back on the show 2020. And here's the key why I'm suggesting him to you guys. He gets humans to bring their animals to him to heal the animal. And the animal's saying, no, we're bringing him. We're bringing her along. And they tell him what the bloody human needs. Oh, it's funny. So funny.
Yeah,
It's
I've
really
had animal
amazing.
communicator do stuff for my horses. I've done consults with the animal communicator, and it's pretty profound stuff. I had a young horse. I owned the mother, and I leased her out to a very good friend to have a foal. And when the foal was born, they decided that she wasn't what they were wanting. So she came back to me, but I just had spinal surgery, and I wasn't in a position. So she kind of was going from place to place for a couple of months. And I couldn't touch this horse, and I'm a pretty experienced horse person. And so I linked in with the animal communicator, and the horse told me, she said, you nobody wants me. I'm destined to be this great, amazing animal. But I don't even have a name. Like I feel really lost. And she said, my name is Crystal Waterfall. Anyway, this horse had hurt itself quite badly, and I needed to get a bandage on its leg, but I couldn't even touch it, let alone its back leg. And I went up to the farm and I said, Crystal Waterfall, I hear you. And I apologized. I said, I'm sorry. And I told her how much she was loved and wanted. I kid you not. I walked up, I put a halter on that horse. I walked her into the stable. I bandaged her hind leg. And from that day on, was a different horse. So yeah, I'm totally sold on the animal communication stuff. It's definitely changed my relationships with animals, having some understanding into that side of things.
Yeah, because you know that horse or lots of animals take on their owner's stuff, don't they? And like the owners either haven't got a clue or choose not to take that on board.
Well, I do a bit of work that I do as part of my practice is I work with horse people, because you bring your baggage into the human horse relationship, and you will repeat patterns of behaviors with your horses in the same way you will with your loved ones or your family. You will bring your trauma into the relationship. And while we have that going on, that's going to continue to interfere with the goals that you have for your relationship. It even can mean sometimes that people are really adverse to doing things with their horses because of their own trauma. They kind of live vicariously through their horse. It's like, oh, I don't want to push my horse. I'm too scared to do this or that. But I really want to achieve these goals, which can cause a lot of conflict in the relationship. So, yeah, it's true. Horses are a mirror of us, or our animals are a mirror of us, and vice versa.
Wow. Any other stories to share or amazing testimonials that you'd like to share? Because it's really lovely.
I talk
here
all night.
No, but it's for not being a horsey person as such and knowing what goes on. And I mean, you know, they are such powerful beings. So I suppose they're like overpowering some of them because they're so big and strong and forceful, aren't they?
Sorry, go.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I've got one really large horse to some smaller ones.
Say hello, Ginny.
What is that?
Hey?
That's two of the horses here. There's Ginny and Rocket. So I did a reel. I've not really done reels before, and I thought, well, I'll have a go to see what it's all about. So, yeah.
All them flies, eh? Little flies
They're
annoying you.
They are.
Just
Now they're well loved here. I mean, there's goats and sheep and chickens. So yeah, I just love seeing them all come out skipping in the morning. The goats all go skipping down the paddock and just magic. So,
gorgeous weather there at the moment. Beautiful.
It is very green. But yeah, so the other two were in because there's a lot of flies. You know, I know, like, I think Australia, you get different flies, so you different sort of insects over there to what we get here. But she's been working with trying out different alternative stuff for them. So yeah. Anyway,
it's a big part of our work is stuff like fly management, because if the horses are swishing their tails a lot, stamping their feet, agitated, it can really interrupt a session. So yeah, making sure we get on top of flies is a big part of what we do. But going on to the size, it's really interesting how different clients are drawn to size. It can actually form an important, I guess, starting point for the therapeutic work that we do, is even noticing some people are really attracted to the big horses and the feeling of power and being able to command such a large animal to do what they want. So yeah, it's quite interesting sometimes how people do choose the horses that they want to work with.
Absolutely.
One of the like, when I'm not sure which one goes in first, but like when Ginny go in, Rocket's here snorting, and I can hear one of them now because one of them is in the stable. But God, carry on, because one of them's gone in.
Yeah, the herd structure is really important. So a lot of what we base our work on the fact that horses are a prey animal, and horses, when they're living in a natural herd environment. So when you take horses away in a natural herd environment, horses are generally really well regulated and they don't have a lot of health issues. But when you start taking horses into environments such as racing stables, where horses are stable for long periods of time or kept in paddocks by themselves, you do see different behaviors come up that you wouldn't usually see. So you can see depression, you see anxiety, you see different habits, almost like smoking. We call it wind sucking, that start to arise in horses that are kept in environments that aren't as close to nature as possible. So that's also part of what we do in our work, is trying to make sure that horses are living in a natural herd environment. So they do model their natural, healthy horse responses. And what Warren was saying earlier was the horses do naturally regulate themselves. So we'll often sigh when we're annoyed at something. Horses do the same. They go, whereas horses are so in their body and in the moment, they actually notice the beautiful release that comes from that behavior. Whereas us, we usually sigh, but it's like, come on, hurry up, you haven't cleaned your room, and we're so in our head. We're actually not connected with that beautiful release that the breath work offers us. And when horses are kept in these environments, they model all these beautiful, healthy ways to have great emotional regulation, great boundary setting, beautiful connections, and really clear communication that they can offer and demonstrate and model for us when we're working with them or watching them. So yeah, horses really do need each other, rely on each other. And I bring in, beside the psychology and the counselling, and I was also a teacher in my previous life too, I bring in a little bit of anthropology and evolutionary science as well to help clients really connect with their bodies and who we are as a species, as an animal, and what we are actually designed to do as an animal. So we look at the horses, and it's really easy to kind of tell what every single part of their body was put on them for. And we kind of do the same with us, because when you get a really good perspective of why we are here, including the need for connection and community, like Warren, you were saying, is a big part of your work. We often lose these things in our humanness and our domesticity. So I try to bring all of this back, and having the horses together is a really nice way to model that.
The relationship they have with each other, Andrena. Just a little quick story. We had our lovely mare, Maggie. She was 35, and she passed away. She brought herself home in front of the house, in the house paddock, and she passed away there. We knew her time was coming. But the other, particularly, the other two horses were with her, Georgia and Dakota. They'd all been paddock mates for many, many years. And, they stayed with her for hours. They literally stayed with her body for hours. And I firmly believe they have the capacity and the emotional feelings of loss and grief and love and they really develop amazing relationships with one another. And the lovely thing about having the herd of horses, that's why we prefer never to have a horse on its own. They are a herd animal, but when you have a large number of horses, you really get that sense of how they work with one another and what's going on in that moment. Once again, here and now. They used to think there were lead horses or horses that were in charge of the pack or the herd, but now I think it's more about, certainly some of the mares have greater experience with things, but it's whatever's happening at the time and who needs to step up at the time, to do what needs to be done. And there's so much we have forgotten because of our, the way we've developed. We have this in us, but we've lost some of it, through the generations. Yeah.
There's a guy called Chris James. He's a natural singing coach, and he gets you to open your voice so it's right out here, not like classical train where you're doing up and down the scales. And he starts, and the concept I'm giving you may help you guys in the field when you bring people into the paddock. He gets you at the very beginning with a bunch of Neville nobodies, 30 people, and in a weekend he's got you singing in perfect harmonies.
Wow.
Sopranos, altos, baritones, and basses.
I don't know if that'll work with me, but I'll give it a go.
Yeah. And what he does is quite simple. It's just like you guys and horses. He gets you to stand there as if you're riding a horse, okay? And so you're prepared to get on the horse. And then you got to do what the horse does. You got to go. And he says because the first 5-6 years of a child, we've got a tone in our voice. It's almost a singing voice. And when we get back into that heartfelt sense, we can really expand our whole voice range. It's amazing how you can increase from just being in a scale of 1 octave. You can take you into the 2nd and 3rd octave. And I'm suggesting to you that could be a little technique when you've got people coming into the paddock and you get them there to think they're really riding a horse, and they've got to go.
I love that.
The out-breath is very important, Jeffrey. Yeah,
Absolutely.
That's a big part of what we do. The out-breath.
Working with kids, you've definitely got to embrace your inner child, and I think this kind of work lends that kind of being out in nature and kind of going with the flow, lends yourself to that. So I'll definitely give that a go.
Well, that's where Andrena comes into it, because she got taught by a Cherokee medicine woman. She spent 2 years up in Oklahoma, and she taught her all about tones and how we miss certain notes and semitones in our body. And if you then tone those notes, it brings it back into your body. So Andrena's, the one to talk about if you're missing the key of C or the key of D. The American Red Indian philosophy is all about the breath and how you reach your full potential in the voice range. Andrena, you take it up. You explain.
Yeah. I haven't done it for a while since I've been back for various reasons, but it's all about the notes coming through your speaking voice. So each note relates to a color and a star sign. So, for example, I'm a Scorpio, so my color is aqua blue, and obviously Scorpios are all about communication in the throat, which is hello. This is the work I do. So I can send anybody the introduction and their birth note. So you just tone to that, and you can, if you close your eyes and just tone to the tone, you will feel your own strength and power, and your note could be real wobbly or it strong. But if you keep practicing, it's like, and it brings you back into your center as well. So it's like some, for example, I worked with a guy, and he was, after we did his voice, he said he couldn't give up his wife and his girlfriend. I went, oh, lucky you. We laughed. And and all of a sudden I had this huge ding dong moment. And I said, well, what's their star sign? So just say they were a Scorpion, a Saggy, which is G and G sharp. In his chart, he was missing both those notes. So he was coming from a place of need and not a place of power.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, he came in like 4 weeks later, and I made a note. G was the wife and G sharp was the girlfriend. Well, I could see that he'd been toning G sharp because the notes of the girlfriend were a lot stronger than the notes of the wifey. So I said, well, how's it going? He said, oh, really well. I said with the wife, he said, yeah, a lot better. And I said, the girlfriend, he said, well, that's really going well. I thought, you don't need to tell me that. I could tell you. But yeah, so it's important that you're coming from a place of power rather than a place of need. And, you can hear some people that got toxic voices, or they're a bit monotone. And of course, each note relates to, like C starts with Aries and you work up to Pisces. And so obviously each note as you work up relates to different issues that's going on in your body. So it's just about bringing another way of bringing all your notes back into balance. And it's powerful because it's like your soul frequency. You're bringing that in and you're expanding your own inner world out, so yeah.
It is all about balance. Yeah. You're right.
I've been following the work of a guy in the States, Kerry Thompson, and he does some really interesting things around sensory soundness with horses. And he looks at rhythm. And I was thinking that idea of vibrational tone from the throat as a type of rhythm. And he often talks about when horses become quite dysregulated, especially with human intervention, is often because they're out of sync with their own natural body rhythm. And I've been taking this idea into working with my clients because I notice a lot of my clients who have autism are very rhythm based, and the world in which we live at, the pace that the world kind of operates at and the pace that sometimes our natural rhythms need are quite disconnected. So sometimes we need to go slower and need to go faster. We need to do some specific type of repetitive type of rhythm in the work, because that's what they're finding with horses. If you help if you find the right frequency, the right rhythm for them, it helps all of their senses connect. So what you're seeing, what you're hearing can become a bit discombobulated with horses. And I find with autistic people as well, I'm neurodivergent myself, one sense can kind of play in your system, and it becomes almost difficult to focus on anything else because things are so loud or there's so much kind of movement. And when we can find the right rhythm for us, and that could be through singing, that could be through movement, it could be playing an instrument, whatever it might be, then coming with that, it helps everything kind of fluidly move through us instead of the environment bouncing off us. So I'm really curious about the work that he's doing and the way that we can bring it into ourselves. But those ideas of patterns, rhythms, and frequencies, I think, are so important to who we are as an organism. Often overlooked.
Yeah, we do that in trauma yoga as well. We look at our rhythm, reconnecting, and that's part of that. And that's that introspection when you're not connected to yourself, and and by building new neural pathways through like I said before, that could be something very, very simple, just having choice to do something like lift your arm up or not lift your arm up, to be in a moment, can be really empowering for, for people then to make choices in their own life about things and find their rhythm again, who they are, what they like, and how that rhythm as well. It could be around music, but it could just be finding their human rhythm. Who am I?
Yeah.
How do I walk in this world? And
absolutely.
And that's that trauma, like that's connecting back. And I think that's what's really important with the horses as well. And I just wanted to I know we're probably going over time, but
that's all right.
I wanted to I found this in our training, and I don't know who to credit it to, but people often ask us, like, why do you, people ask, like, why horses all the time? Like, why not another type of animal? Like, why do you use horses in this work? And everyone has touched on this, this evening, but I just wanted to kind of bring it together. And Helen and Warren, if you've got anything else to add, please do. But it says here, horses live in awareness. Horses are able to notice, name, feel, express themselves, and move on without criticism. Horses don't judge you for your decisions, your clothes, your history, your future goals, or your present self. Horses see the real you. They see, feel, and become in connection with us. They don't expect us to understand complex questions or problems, nor do they ask much of us. They hear you, see you, value you, and only ask you to be you. They accept you as you appear, your strengths, your growth edges, feelings, and aspirations. They stand by you they stand by your side in each passing moment instead of asking what if or how would it work. They help you connect to the earth, to yourself, your body, your mind, soul, and your pure uniqueness. They live in their uniqueness and encourage us to do the same. That is why horses. So I just thought that really relates why horses and why we do the work we do. And like I said, everyone has spoken about that this evening, but I just wanted to put that in a nice little bento box with a big.
Was that from the Meg Kirby Equine Psychotherapy Institute?
No, I think it's from someone who has done the course. I just can't remember who it was. So
it's gorgeous.
Wasn't you, was it, Andrea?
What's that?
It wasn't you, was it?
It was not me. I cannot take credit for that, although I think all of those things. I just thought they just encapsulated it so beautifully.
No, that was lovely.
It's gorgeous.
And that's
what an example we could all learn from.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. That's what we're trying to be more like the horse.
Yeah.
The work we do.
Not trying, you are.
Yeah.
I'm a unicorn.
And what's the average age of a horse's life? I've heard you both say about 35 years. Is that a sort of standard age for horses?
It has changed with modern, I guess, what Warren was saying before, the way that we interact with horses are no longer just seen as a tool or equipment. They are actually seen as a sentient being in which we give certain care for. And once upon a time, like when I was a kid, I was told horses lived to 18, 19 back on station life in outback Australia. But now, horses can live well into their 30s. Some, I think the oldest horses even its 50s, but generally late 20s, really? mid 30s if we're lucky.
Yeah, my first horse that I had, she lived till she was 30. Her name was Tara. She was 32 when she passed away. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I've got my old girl. She's 35, and we still take her for little trail rides and toddles out around the park or to the beach, and she's still going super strong.
Now, Warren put up some photos of horses down at Main Beach. What's the go there, brother?
Oh, I was down there I go down to the beach every morning, like from here, which is not far really. It's about 30 minutes down to Main Beach, down the surf, and have a walk or a bike ride or a swim. Try and swim most of the year. But one morning they had the horses down there. They're probably off the track, but it was just one of my horses. But it was just beautiful seeing the horses and the rising sun over the Pacific Ocean, and that's something that I would love to do. So I just, it's just a dream, I guess, that I've always had, to be able to ride my horses along the
Bring
beach.
them.
Do that.
Come down sometime. The Spit is really a place where you can go and do equine therapy down at the beach, because there's access for the float for the horses at the Spit.
Yeah, there are places. We're fortunate, aren't we? That I think down at Kingscliff too.
Cabarita, Cabarita. That's a great little place to take horses.
We'll get our horses and go down there one weekend.
We should do it. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Hello.
So, that's,
you're invited too, Jeffrey, if you'd like to come.
Hey, apparently my mate up at Noosa North Shore there, where they have the camels and horses, they go riding on the beach there. You can ride a horse.
Yeah, I don't know if they do stabling up there anymore. I think they closed that part of it down. It was a little bit hard to. The stables up at Noosa North Shore. Yeah, it used to be great to go up to when I was north side of Brisbane.
I'll ask Robbie to be here on Monday. Yeah. Otherwise, I went out to Tara for the camel racing, and they came up from Port Stephens, and they take camels along the beach there for twilight.
Oh, beautiful! Yeah,
very brilliant. They had the winning camel there too. Oh, it was fantastic camel racing.
Our family come from a place called Boulia. And they have camel races out there once a year, and it's a wild ride, that one. I haven't done it myself. I haven't been brave enough, but it looks like a ton of fun.
Yeah, when I work in Alice Springs, it's big in the Northern Territory too. So when I've worked out there in the Indigenous communities, I got to experience lots of different things. Also, horses are massive in some of the communities out there and helping young Indigenous people. Yeah, really, really great work. But yeah, camels are huge. It's huge business.
I know. I went to Uluru once on one occasion, and we were in one of the hotel rooms there, or motel, and I'm looking out the window, and the next thing, this camel and this man's coming by, and I thought it was just amazing. But of course the camels over there get overpopulated, don't they? And they get rid of a lot, sadly. But yes,
there's lots of camels, donkeys, and wild horses out in the territory. So you see them as you're driving out and into the desert. So
call them ships of the desert. They used to call them the big camel trains. Yeah, ships of the desert.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, amazing.
Well, my mate and I went out past a place called Ninga Gully. It's a population of 9, I think it was. And 2,000 of us all turned up. We went for the pig racing.
Oh wow! Oh yeah.
Fantastic. Oh, yeah, country people really have a good life, isn't it?
Yeah, aren't they ingenuitive though? Like they can find fun out of anything. They don't need a TV. They don't need to be entertained. They just find their own entertainment. I love that.
The innovation, huh?
Yeah. We even went to see Yabby racing as well.
Oh, Yabby racing.
Yabby racing, yeah. For those people who are overseas, Yabbies are, just trying to think.
They're like a crayfish, like a wild crayfish. Oh, like a prawn, yeah.
Yeah, freshwater prawn, yeah. More like a crayfish,
About 15 times as big, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, so carry on.
I was just saying toad racing.
Oh, toad racing, yeah. Cane toads.
Oh. The mind boggles.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a Northern Queensland thing, isn't it? Up at Port Douglas and Cairns, yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, our overseas audience is going to learn a bit more about Australia's way of life.
Yeah, Aussies will race anything by the sounds of it.
Cockroaches?
Yeah, that's it.
Well, your cockroaches are big.
Yes, I know. That's scary.
Yeah.
We want people to come here, Warren. We want them to come.
Yeah.
Traumatize people.
Cut.
I know. My Italian relatives and my Scottish relatives, they're all, things you got over there.
I know my American friends are the same. It's like, we don't have cats that'll eat you, though. What we've got's not too scary.
No. Well, we could be cheeky and say as Queenslanders that when there's a state of origin, there's a lot of cockroaches come across the border.
Yeah, absolutely.
No.
That's an in-house joke, of course. All right.
Right.
Andrena, you carry
Yeah,
on.
no, I was going to say it's been an absolute delight having the three of you on. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing. It's been absolutely lovely, and keep up doing the beautiful work that you're doing. So
Thank you.
an absolute blessing. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's been a delight. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for tuning in and watching Dreaming the New Dream, and we'll see you same time, same place next week.
All right.
Okay.
Just stay on board.
Okay.
See you.
Bye.